stakeholder.
In gambling, an independent party with whom each of those who make a wager deposits the money or counters wager.
A person with an interest or concern in something, especially a business.
In emergency management, any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival and recovery of a given community. You.
Welcome to Stakeholder Prepping.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you, are the stakeholder in your own survival. We are your hosts. My name is Chris.
And I'm AC. And today, we have a very special guest, an accomplished homesteader and published author and more professional podcaster than us, Renee Wilkinson. Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
It's always a pleasure to see a new face. And Renee, our audience doesn't really know you. I mean, AC and I have talked with you a little bit more than our audience probably has. So what can you say to give us kind of the 5-minute Renee bio? Like, explain to us a little bit about what you do, why we are talking to you as a subject matter expert, kind of fill the rest of our audience in, if you will.
Sure. Let me set the scene for you. So I live in Portland, Oregon. I live on an urban lot. It's a 1/10 of an acre city lot. I'm a mom to 3 kids, and I'm a 6th-generation Oregon homesteader. So my family has pretty deep roots in Oregon. I grew up in outer southeast Portland, which for many of you who are not familiar with that area, when I was growing up, it was like 1-acre lots. So it was kind of on the fringe of the city. And my family grew up without a lot of financial resources. And so we grew a lot of our own food to make up for that. So I had this wonderful childhood of like climbing apple trees and being forced to be outside helping my dad in the garden all summer long, and learning some of those great old skills. I feel like when I came into adulthood, I didn't necessarily feel like I started out any further ahead than anyone else, though, because it's one thing to kind of be doing that under the shadow of someone else growing up, and it's another thing to be kind of doing it on your own. So I feel like I had a lot of life experience of trial and error, learning how to be self-sufficient on my own in an urban environment. I mean, I still go to the grocery store on a regular basis, but I think the value of being able to save money, reduce my carbon footprint, and then just laziness of not wanting to go to the store every other day and being able to go out your backyard and get some of the stuff that you need to eat was a really empowering experience for me. Around the time when blogs were most popular, if you guys remember that, what was that, like the early 2000s, I started keeping a blog called Hip Chick Digs that was all about urban homesteading. So it was kind of in the early days when people didn't really know what that would look like on a city level, and urban agriculture was just starting to kind of get its footing. And so I kept that blog going for a real long time, and then eventually went back to school, became a landscape architect because I loved plants so much I needed to make it my job, and wrote a book during that time about urban homesteading. I worked at and taught at the Urban Farm, which is an outdoor classroom at University of Oregon, where I kind of honed my urban agricultural chops. And here I am, like a couple decades later, still trucking on.
This is going to be fun.
And yeah, this is gonna be great. So you also have a podcast, and it's very successful.
Yeah.
Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I feel like when you meet creative people, they're like doing 100 things, and you guys are probably like that too. Like, it's like, which of the projects do you want me to talk about? So yeah,
Right.
We started a podcast 4 years ago called Cookbook Club Show, and you can find us on all of the places where you find the podcasts. I have a cookbook club that I formed with, there's 11 of us in the group, and we get together every month and we all cook from the same cookbook, and then we each make a dish and we get together and talk about it and share a meal. So we made a podcast version of that where we do the same thing. We pick a cookbook, we make a bunch of recipes from it, and then we get together and we talk about how it went, what worked, what didn't, and whether that cookbook deserves a spot on our cooking shelf. And then we also talk about cooking topics for people who are real big food nerds who want to know like what the very best meatball recipe is. We'll tell you about the 30 ones that we made and which ones we thought were the best.
That's awesome. It's funny when I originally thought about asking you to come on our podcast, I got the idea actually from listening to one of your episodes on camping food. And
Oh, yeah.
when we start talking about ingredients that are shelf stable or don't require a ton of complicated preparation, then we're really talking about prepping food. So I think there's a ton of synergies between what you do on the Cookbook Club podcast and kind of the prepper friendly outdoory type meals. I mean, it's this very spork heavy meals, I think, really, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think probably we agree that those emergency kit foods that you can buy leave a lot to be desired, right?
Salt and noodles. It's just fucking salt and noodles.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a lot of carbohydrates. And so I mean, I guess you could categorize me as a food snob. So let me just be really upfront about that. And so I don't want to eat something that makes me feel awful. And I have a little bit of bandwidth in my life to like prepare for, things not going according to plan in life and maybe needing to hunker down at home. And so I totally agree with you that taking things that are recipes designed for backpacking and camping that are actually good food, you can easily apply that to your stay kit or your go kit or whatever. So I do have a couple of cookbooks that I would love to shout out if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put links to them on our blog for sure.
Of course.
Okay, so one of them is called The Scouts Backpacking Cookbook by Tim and Christine Connors. Have you guys ever seen this book before?
I have that book, believe
I
it
You
or
do?
not.
I was going to
I
say Chris
do.
probably does.
Have you cooked from it?
It has been over a decade. I don't want to date myself, but it's probably been 2 decades since I've cooked from it. But yeah, I have.
Okay, so this book I think is awesome for the go kit or the stay kit. I mean, it's great for camping, but backpacking food is designed to be lightweight and not need a lot of like heavy ingredients. And so I have found tons of great recipes in here that I've applied to my stay kit at home. Um, I'll just shout out a couple. Like they have this Appalachian chicken and rice dish in here that calls for all dried ingredients with the exception of one pouch of cooked chicken. So it has like an envelope of cream of chicken flavor cup of soup, and it has some McCormick seasoning and some dried mushrooms and instant brown rice. Like if you're going to be in some sort of emergency situation where you're going to have to just eat what you have, you're going to be so much happier if you're eating something like that than you are one of those like gross, flavorless, like filled with no nutritional value emergency kit buckets, like the Trough bucket.
Have you ever done that recipe with canned chicken?
Yeah, I have. And I
Really?
thought it turned out pretty good.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great recipe. That's a good one. There was another book you had?
Oh, the other book is for people maybe who don't, and maybe your listeners are all like super outdoor enthusiasts and you guys totally got this and you're not worried at all about having to like learn how to cook outside with limited resources. But if
We would
you
all
maybe
like to think so. Yeah.
But
for
if
sure.
maybe you would like to brush up on your skills, I'll say this is kind of a bougie gourmet cookbook, but it's called the Camp Out Cookbook. And this was written by a couple women in Portland, actually, Marnie Hannell and Jen Stevenson. And first of all, the book is beautifully designed. I have cooked a lot from this when I've gone camping, but it's like car camping, So this is different than like lightweight stuff that you're going to have to carry for a long distance. But they really do a good job of teaching you in a very upbeat way how to like cook properly with a Dutch oven, how to do the charcoal, exactly how much. So if you want a little bit of practice and you actually want to like enjoy the food that you're eating because it's good quality food, I would check this book out. I have cooked from a lot of different camping cookbooks and backpacking cookbooks, and I would say the vast majority of them just don't taste that great, or it's like really basic. Like I think we probably all don't need instructions on how to like open a can of like pie filling that you can buy from the store and like put, I think we can all kind of figure that stuff out, but this will elevate it a little bit further for you.
As long as you've got your P38 can opener that we prattle on about all the time, yes, you can open just about anything. I did I did want to say, like, the car camping, and I mean that kind of equates to the bug out camping food. If you do have a multi-day, or if you get stalled on the road or something like that, and have the ability to whip out the Coleman stove with the propane tanks and just cook out of the bed of the truck, or the back of the Subaru, something like that, that's going to be a lot more comfortable than trying to light a fire underneath the car and not light the gas tank on fire while you're cooking hot dogs.
Yeah. Are you guys ready for me to blow your mind with some like mom energy right now?
Do it.
I'm
Do it.
I'm not this is not me. I'm not this level of mom dumb, but I have a friend who's a big avid outdoors woman, and she always has in the back of her minivan this like hard tote so that it doesn't take up trunk space really. You can put stuff on top of it. You're not going to crush what's in it. And she always keeps a rocket stove in the inside of it. And then she basically has a traveling pantry. So no matter where she is, if she gets stuck in the snow, she has like hot food and soups and tuna, but she goes the extra mile and has like tea and hot chocolate and like marshmallows for the kids. Like she's thinking about people other than herself with um that car kit. And to me that's like next level. My car kit is much more basic than that, and my go kit is much more basic than that. But I think keeping something like that in your car all the time makes sense. And then if it's food that you want to eat, maybe you will actually eat it and cycle through it naturally instead of like having it, forgetting about it. And then 3 years later, if you're in an emergency, you open it up and you're like, oh, wow, this stuff is like the marshmallows are rock solid now. And, um,
Well,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but you and your friend are both preppers. If you've
Yeah.
got food, if you've got energy drinks, if you've got stuff in the back of the car ready to go for that emergency, you are by definition a prepper. It's just taking it to that next level.
That's right. Yeah, if you've got a bunch of marshmallows in the back of your car, you're definitely a prepper. I think marshmallows, I don't know, I think the ingredients in them are actually marshmallows. Like, I'm pretty sure marshmallows on the periodic table. Like they're the most basic thing you can you can eat. But I wanted to, can we circle back to homesteading a little bit, because you are a homesteader. You homestead on a tenth of an acre, which is crazy to me, like an urban homesteading. And I just kind of want to chat about what does that mean to you when you say an urban homesteading? What does that mean to you, and where does that get started?
Yeah, for me, the definition of homesteading is not like a hard fixed thing. Like you have to be able to check all of these boxes to get your homesteader badge. I think for me, it's more of an intention and a lifestyle. And I don't want that to sound cheesy, like everything needs to be this like perfect Pinteresty, Instagrammy life, but like there's much more dirt and mud and sweat in my version of it. But it's really like connection to the land. So even if I only have a tenth of an acre, I'm making sure that I'm taking care of that and I'm using all of that space wisely, using my resources wisely. It's the preserving old skills. I think there's something really important to me about knowing how to do all of this stuff on your own. It's like confidence building, and it just it can pay off when there's like a huge ice event and we lose power in our neighborhood for like a week at a time. But I think just the confidence that you know how to do these things. Yes, we have modern technology to make life easier, but I've always been more interested in knowing how the watch is made than knowing what time it is. And then the other piece of it to me is that there's the lifestyle benefit of like I'm eating healthier food. Maybe sometimes I'm saving money, but to me that's less important. It's like I want the best quality food that I can put into my body. And so there's like physical benefit there, there's exercise there, and then there's the mental health benefit of being able to put my hands in soil at the end of a workday and let things go. And I'm like my best self when I am um, balancing modern life with homesteading.
That's awesome. You talked a little bit about preserving those old skills and things like that. I imagine you've kind of done all of the trial and error for us. So, can you talk about some of the mistakes or pitfalls that you have made as a beginner urban homesteader, and things that you would steer other people away from, maybe?
Yeah, I think that during the pandemic was an example of what some of those pitfalls are. Like, I think people experience some of that individually. they were like, oh, I'm home and like I can't get bread from the store. So
How many sourdough recipes happened
Yep,
during the pandemic?
all of those
yeah.
sourdough starters that
Everyone.
grew legs and walked away.
And what and I would love to see people continue this. Like for me, I want this lifestyle to be sustainable and it doesn't look the same for everybody. But like, there are people out there who are still making sourdough. And I think that's so awesome. Or at least they picked up a new skill and they know how to do it. But I think the biggest mistake that people make, and this is probably why some of those people are not doing those things anymore that they did during the pandemic, is that they bite off way more than they can chew. They're like, I am so excited about this homesteading thing. I've never done any of this before. I'm going to rip out everything. Okay, so here's mistake number one. I'm going to rip out everything and start fresh. And to me, that's kind of conceited because it's like, your way might not be the best way. Like maybe some of the things that you have here actually should stay, maybe look at it a little bit more creatively. And maybe that tree that's creating a lot of shade doesn't actually need to be taken down. Like maybe that's a great place for you to go hang out in your garden or put your chicken coop because they're going to get some natural shade. So maybe don't like take a bulldozer to your landscape, but also doing that and like ripping everything out all at once is you're going to have a mountain of work that you're not used to having. And so I really encourage people to like take it down a little bit, like bring it down to something that's more bite size and start with that. Like don't start with, I'm going to bring in goats and chickens and pigs and grow all my own food and like whatever, because maybe you're going to get burnt out and then you won't be able to do any of those things. And I would rather somebody do like a handful of things and do them forever than do like 30 things and then burn out after a year.
So it's that scalable aspect. It's the don't start with 800 chickens. Maybe start with 2 and see if you can handle that.
Yeah, or I always encourage people to start with 3 or 4 because chickens get lonely. So if you have a raccoon attack and you only, end up with 1 chicken, you're going to have a problem. But yeah.
I had a raccoon attack 2 nights ago.
Oh no.
Luckily, my dog is very in tune with that stuff, and the rooster made a noise in the middle of the night, which you always know what it is. And I did the whole like spiky thing over the chicken coop. I really haven't had a lot of issues lately, but my trees are big enough that they're kind of going over the walls of the chicken coop. So no, I did not lose a chicken, and I have a raccoon in my freezer until trash day right now.
Gross.
So you don't need a raccoon for anything, do you, Renee? I didn't know if you've
No,
tried.
I'm good.
Okay,
I'm good on
but
hats and winter coats.
right. Okay, good. So you had mentioned, so that scalability of it starting small. In your scenario, what are the next things you would do? Like on that 10th acre, if that turned into a quarter acre or a half acre, let's scale it up a little bit. What's the next thing you could do if you had the time and room and money and effort and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I'm a meat eater, and so for me, that would be the number one thing that I would do if I had more space. I don't really have the space to raise like meat chickens a couple times a year. I mean, there are people who are doing that on my scale of property, but that's not the look that I'm going for. I really feel like especially in urban spaces, but honestly in rural spaces too, like your landscape should be a place that is aesthetically pleasing to be in. So I don't really want to turn my whole backyard into like a meat animal farm. But if I had more land, if I had more land, I would love to be able to do that because that would just help also in terms of self-sufficiency. I also love the idea of a flower production area as a side hustle. That's not something that I'm going to like trade in my amazing job in landscape architecture that I love to like go be a dahlia farmer or something. But I think that there's value there for pollinators and also just to bring people joy and kind of keep your local economy going. So that would be a fun thing to do as well.
My wife actually brought up the idea to me a couple of nights ago about if we had a pond and stocked it with koi. I mean, they're not great eating. They're almost like catfish, but I mean, they'll keep you survived. But you could use that as passive income when they get large enough, because koi fish will go for $3,000 to $5,000 a piece.
Oh yeah, people will buy crazy koi. If they got koi with like a weird symbol on it, like the Chinese symbol for luck or something, yeah, that koi is going to go for $1 billion.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I do have a question about the technology differences, right? So some of your 10th acre homestead is very old school traditional. Some of it is undoubtedly more nouveau riche, if you will. So what are some of the technology differences that you find old school works best for some things, but new school works best for others? I mean, are you doing like vertical planters out of PVC pipe, or do you have the walk-in, uh, the standing elevated planter boxes or things like that? Or where are you kind of defining that difference?
Yeah, I think urban landscapes present a unique set of challenges because my land has seen all kinds of interesting things, I'm sure, in the time that it has been like a residential lot, or since my neighborhood was developed, my parcel has probably been a lot of different things. So if I were to dig down in the ground, I'd probably find like broken glass or who knows what. I mean, people in urban cities 50 years ago were burying their garbage sometimes in their backyard. So I don't love the idea of planting in the soil because of a laziness thing, not because I'm like worried that there's like toxins or something like that, but more that I would have to work for a lot of time to build up the soil, like the natural ground soil. It's been like so compacted and urbanized, and I don't want to do that. Like, I'm too lazy for that. I also have a dog, dogs that are going to trample all over it. So for practicality and quick and ease of quick time, I have built up and I have raised beds. And the raised beds are about 20 inches off the ground, 18 to 20 inches. So it actually makes a really comfortable ledge to sit on if you're out there like doing stuff and you need a break while you're like weeding. And also then you have more control. You have all the control over what quality of soil you're going to put in there. So that's how I do it at my place. When I grew up on that urban farm, we had an acre and it had just been farmed. So we had great soil out there. My dad could till it, and have all the room to do that. But it doesn't really make sense for my lot to do it that way. I have some new technology that I integrate into it because I'm in Portland. We have pretty mild winters, but they're still cold enough that we're going to get some snow and some freeze. And so I have greenhouse plastic that I hoop over my raised beds, and that really extends my growing season. So I can usually grow things a little bit longer into the fall and winter and keep them alive through the winter. They may not put on a ton of growth, but they'll survive. Like if I put my broccoli starts out there, they'll survive winter. And then as soon as it starts to get a little bit warmer and have a little bit more daylight in February, they just totally take off. I mean, they take off so much faster than if you were to just wait and plant in the spring. And so I really employ that greenhouse plastic to help me garden year round here. So that has been a huge benefit. And then I have, like really wonderful luxuries, like a chicken coop that I can walk into. It's like standing, 6 feet, 7 feet tall in the run. So I can easily like stand in there and clean everything out. I mean, just those little things as someone who has a career in like design, those little things make life so much more enjoyable. Like I think about, mucking out livestock pens, and if you have to be like crouched over and you have to do that job every couple of weeks, you're going to be so grumpy about it. So if you just take the time to make the design a little bit more thoughtful, so it's a little bit more comfortable, it just makes it not such a chore.
Very nice. I like that. I want to talk about kind of the stuff that you always stock at home. We're always talking about the have 2 weeks of food on hand ready to go, or have your 72-hour kit with food ready to go. I mean, what are some of the things that you really stock or overstock at home versus things that you just go to the store for? Because I'm sure we all go to the store. We all have to do it to get fresh stuff. So what do you grow versus what do you buy?
Yeah, well, what we grow is really focused on eggs from the chickens, honey from my bees. I have a couple beehives, and then we have tons of produce. Like I designed our garden as an urban food forest, which means there's all these layers of like fruit trees and berry bushes and perennial herbs and stuff like that. So we have a lot at that time of year, but then what if the apocalypse happens in January? You're not going to be eating so well. And again, to the laziness, like I don't want to have to go to the store every time I want to bake something. Like again, the homesteading thing is a lifestyle for me. I really enjoy like the total control over making my own food for me and my family, and I take a lot of pleasure in that. So I usually have a very good stock of baking supplies at home at all times. And I have a whole system using restaurant containers. You know, if you've worked in a kitchen at a restaurant, they usually have these like clear plastic or sometimes like white plastic uh, rectangular or square bins that have just tight fitting lids on them. And so I went to a restaurant supply store and I stocked up on a bunch of those. And that's what I use to have my flour, my sugar. I have jasmine rice and basmati rice because I'm a snob. I have cornmeal. I have all the dried beans that we go through regularly because, again, I'm a snob. And if you make your own, you know, if you're going to make hummus, it's way more cost effective to do that if you start with dried chickpeas. And it's going to taste better, in my opinion, too. So those kind of dry goods I always have on hand. I also have bread flour and all the other baking stuff. Um, and then I'm like visualizing it in my head. So then I go up like a shelf. Those are on the bottom shelf. Then I have my like coffee, which I love coffee. And yes, if like we lost power for a week, I, I'm going to be so much happier if I have coffee to drink. And so, yes, in part, I'm keeping it for that. And so, but I'm also just keeping it because I don't want to go to the store every month to keep up with my coffee habit. So I have a really big bin for coffee. And then when it gets to about halfway full, and this is sort of my philosophy with my like overflow pantry in general, if it starts to get to like the halfway mark, that's when I know I need to order more. And I might order more in like a week or two, but that way I always, it's like a grocery store where like the new stuff comes in, you bring the old stuff upstairs and use it. And then when you start to get low again, you like order more. And then I have a bunch of canned goods, like canned tomatoes, and I do have canned beans for the times when I'm like lazy and I didn't think about what to make for dinner. The New York Times actually had this article a few years ago. I'll see if I can find a link for you guys for the show notes, but it was a joke about how so many of us go to the grocery store and we're like, I think that I might need another can of chickpeas. And so like a bunch of us have like way too many cans of chickpeas in our pantries because they're so versatile. Like if you didn't think about what to have for dinner. And then I have the luxury of having a stand-up freezer, which is like a major, uh, if you're going to spend money on something, like that's a very good place to spend your money. So that I use to store 50-pound bags of blueberries from my favorite blueberry farm. And we also buy our meat from a meat CSA. That's this really cool woman-owned first-generation farm down in Eugene. And so I get all my meat from her, and then I get my salmon from a salmon CSA. So it sounds like you might be an angler, Chris. So like maybe you're getting all that stuff on your own, which is great, but I don't. And so I just want to make sure I'm getting it from good places, and I buy it all at once, and then I just eat off of that for the year.
If anything would bite, I could call myself an angler.
Have you, Renee, have you done have you done cowboy coffee? Are you familiar with this?
Is this where the grounds are in the mug?
No, I think that is
Okay.
kind of like a cowboy coffee. No, this is a thing. I bought some at the local farmer's market. I got a recipe. I want to try it. So it's something people do where you boil down coffee. So it's kind of like, you're getting like coffee mud basically, but then there is um, a recipe to add some amount of honey to it and sort of cook it together. And the whole thing is that the enzymatic stuff in the honey keeps the coffee stable. And so it's basically you're getting this sort of, really concentrated sweet coffee that has virtually no shelf life.
That's interesting. I haven't tried
Yeah.
that.
I bought some. I'll send you some, and I want to try it myself. But you mentioned coffee a lot, and I know coffee is one of those things that it does have a shelf life, even though it is pretty long. But it's probably not something that we're going to get a lot in North America if there is any kind of long-term grid down type scenario.
Yeah, in that scenario, I would really be forced in life to wean myself off of coffee, probably. But I do have instant coffee that I keep in our stay kits, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So my overflow pantry is kind of always like it's like the backbone of my kitchen and the way that I organize my food. But in addition to that, we have stay kits that I made, and I made them with a 5-gallon bucket. Each bucket is a week's worth of food. So that's like really easy for me to keep track of. Like we have 3 weeks of food plus like whatever we actually had in the house, if the house is accessible, if the chickens are still alive, if we happen to have things growing in the garden, that's great. But the bucket system is like our bare bones, what we can live off of. And in each bucket is a thing of instant coffee.
Right.
Because again, like if you're using those buckets, like you need coffee. You need
Yep.
coffee. And probably maybe your neighbors need a little coffee too. And I think that everybody's going to do better if we, have those little luxuries that are going to make it that much easier to get through hard times.
We definitely keep instant coffee as a bartering tool, that's for sure.
I should shout out also that Trader Joe's makes these little instant coffee things that are really good for backpacking and camping. They're too sweet for me, but they are coffee that has a little bit of dried milk and sugar in it. So they're too sweet for me, but those are great mixed with instant coffee because it makes it taste just a little like that sweetness, and the cream makes the instant coffee taste less awful. So that's another thing that I kind of always have in our pantry. And if our house were accessible during an emergency or a disaster, I'd hope that I could reach those to make the coffee taste a little bit better.
I was going to ask if you had, those are, you kind of gave us like the basics, your big basics, but do you have any of outside the box ingredients or things that are super versatile, things that have multiple uses that maybe people wouldn't normally think of that you stock on a normal regular basis?
That's a good question. I think that people undervalue, again, like having food taste good in emergency situations or whatever your like, bunker of food has in it. So I do have like bulk spices that are in vacuum packed things that have a pretty long shelf life. Some of the things that I have in that bucket system are kind of like that, where they're like these really inexpensive, like instant rice chicken flavored things that like I also have like plain rice, too. But this is if you mix this with the plain rice, it's gonna probably taste a lot better. And then there's stuff that I always grow in my garden that I'm lucky enough to live in a climate where I can grow it year round, like herbs, basically, where, man, that's going to like really help if you are stuck at home and you can't go anywhere and you're really isolated. I have a bay leaf tree that it's an evergreen tree, and I can harvest that whenever I need to throughout the year and throw that into soups and stews that I'm making. I always have thyme and usually Italian parsley growing that I'll grow under cover during the winter. Those things usually grow year round for me. So I think sometimes people focus on like the rice and beans. They don't focus enough on like, how are you going to make that taste good?
100%. 100%. We talk about that a lot, is you can get a very inexpensive pack of spices at the grocery store, and that is just going to be a little bit of happiness if you have to, like you said, fall back on the rice and beans. Do you do any of the like drying and long-term storage of that parsley and the things like that you have in your garden? Have you ever done that?
I have done that. I'm a little bit, there's a theme emerging here, right? Of like me being a food snob. So I feel like a lot of soft herbs don't taste great when they're dried. So I know that it like looks beautiful in like a photograph, but parsley doesn't really taste very good, and neither does basil when it's dried. So I mean, sure, like if you're desperate, go ahead and stock that. But I don't put my energy there. I put my energy into different things to dry. And so the things that I dry are usually fruits, because those are things that my family's going to eat anyways. And, when you get like 50 pounds of Asian pears all at once, like you can't possibly eat all of that. So I do dry a lot of fruit. I do water bath canning. So I don't do pressure canning. I think that would be really cool to do, but I just haven't invested in a pressure canner after all these years. But water bath canning, I do a lot, and I usually do tomatoes and then all the variations like ketchup and tomato paste and sauce. And then I'll do some like applesauce, and I do a ton of jam. And again, like I said at the top of the episode, I'm a mom, I have 3 kids. They are not going to eat like green tomato chutney. Like I had a season of my life where I did that, where I was like, oh, let's save every tomato and make like green tomato chutney. And that's great, but like I can't eat 50 quarts of that. And the same thing with, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of stuff like that. Like I do still make chutney, but it's just like I make a small amount because if it sits on our shelf for more than a year, that's the universe telling me that like nobody wants to eat this. And probably they're not going to want to eat it like in a crisis event either. That's another thing that I think people don't think about with their like emergency kits, that if you have little people in your house and even big people who might be picky eaters, they're not going to miraculously want to eat like food in a in a emergency situation that they don't want to eat on like a weeknight, you know? So I think being thoughtful about like, are your kids going to eat the stuff that you're putting in that emergency kit? Like I have stuff in these bucket systems that my kids would be thrilled to eat. Like I don't want them to eat it on a regular basis, but I know that they're going to be so pumped to eat like the SpaghettiOs or like the meat chili in there that's like super salty and like filled with fat, which is great. They'll probably need that maybe if we're in a survival situation. But I have stuff in there they're going to be excited about. It might not be stuff I want to eat every night of, you know, of the year, but you can't think that they're just going to eat rice and beans and be real happy about that. And the worst thing that I could imagine is being in a crisis situation and then having kids that are like hangry, you know, because like you're kind of managing trauma too during that. Like yes, you need to be fed, you need to be like strong and ready for hard work, but you're also managing like everybody's trauma from what's happening. And like having good food is really comforting. That's why we call things like comfort food, because it just feels, it makes us feel better.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really important to think about is if you've got kids who, no, I don't want that. We just had that. I don't want that. I want pizza. I want, okay, well, we don't have
then you're
that,
eating the
so.
kids. They're delicious. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious what you guys have. Like, do you have a system like this for your stay kit?
Yeah, so in the prepper world, we call it a SIP kit, the Survive in Place kit. That's the
Okay.
vernacular, just so you know, it's a SIP kit. Yeah, but, you know, for me, it is funny. I don't do a good job of rotating my stock. I am a little bit more of a hoarder. I have kind of the, you know, the long-term survival-y food buckety stuff just because you have to in the case of MREs. But my jam is sort of the beans and rice in bulk, and then the various hot sauces. I am a hot sauce snob, and I think that just comes from my traveling all over the world and going places where they just try to show off and see if they can, you know, set your mouth on fire. But I do some hot sauce on my own. I do actually make my own hot sauce, and the fermented type hot sauces, the Tabasco-y type stuff that you can do on your own, they have a very long shelf life. They last like almost indefinitely. So that's kind of, I would say that my long-term rotatable stock is, you know, I'll go to Costco and buy those 25-30 pound bags of beans and rice and just eat those as part of the normal meal stuff here and there, you know, do an Indian food night and you're throwing some rice in and rotating those out. But I would say that in a long-term event where I had to survive on the beans and rice, then yeah, that's where my hot sauce stash comes in. I think that's probably my one thing, that's the rotatable stock. Everything else is I guilty. I do have the buckets of, you know, salt and noodles, and I'm not really looking forward to eating them.
And we've got several different kind of kits. We've got a specific box that it's a trunk size crate box, like a giant Pelican case that is just full of foodstuffs if we ever had to bug out. But we've also got a separate stash in our tornado shelter that it's, I think there's 5 or 6 cans of tuna. There's a couple cans of SpaghettiOs up there. There's an extra reserve of dog food. There's extra dog bowls. There's a whole bunch of stuff to really sit in place for 72 hours until we can figure out a way out of that room. But it's all stuff that we eat normally. So every time we, you know, go through 4 cans of tuna, making tuna salad for lunch, that's when we rotate it out, bring the stuff in from the tornado shelter, put that in the pantry and replace it. But we do the same thing as that little rice sides that you held up, the chicken flavored rice sides. We do those all the time. Chicken, they're mushroom rice, especially the Knorr brand. They're really good. And then we also do the like Idahoan mashed potatoes. We've got some of those sitting up because they're super lightweight. They're ultra easy to prepare, and technically, yeah, you can eat them cold. So the thing about our tornado shelter food is none of it has to be heated up, but it could be. And we keep a couple of like the little salt and pepper packets from plasticware that they give you for takeout. And we've got the little packets of relish that we keep up there. So yeah, it's not going to be great. It's going to be a very, very basic tuna salad on tortillas, but it's still better than, just eating SpaghettiOs nonstop or just the Spam or just the ramen noodles. I think for anyone who's a food snob who breaks into our house after we're already gone, after the apocalypse starts, they're going to be absolutely in awe when they open up our spice cabinet because it's 3 full racks of spices of all different kinds, to the point where we built in 2 pull-out drawers to drop down with different spices in them. So
Yeah, I think the spices is the thing where you're just not going to get anymore, right? If those are things that come from other places in the world, those are the kind of the things that I always say to stock. And I'm lucky enough to have. I always call it on our show, Renee. I always call it the homestead and hot storage because I wish I could be like you and spend more time out in the garden. And I have an amazing garden, an amazing place to do it, but I'm just not here enough to do that. So it's like it's ready to go. I've got fruit trees and walnut trees and things like that, but the garden that I maintain every year is a lot smaller than it could be. So I'm almost banking on. I'm like, man, I just hope the world collapses someday so I can have an awesome garden and like be here. That would be great.
One of the things I didn't mention earlier when Chris, you were asking about like new technology that I use in my homestead that may help you, AC, with traveling a lot, is that I invested at the beginning in an automatic irrigation system that's below ground,
Yes.
and they're expensive.
Yes.
It's really expensive to put them in. Nobody wants to put them in. It's always the most boring part when I have to like tell a client like, hey, you're going to have to pay this many thousands of dollars on something that you can't see. But I have that. And so I have my raised beds on their own drip system. So I can water them. I don't have to water the rest of the garden if I don't want to. But when I'm traveling in the summer, like in August, I'm gone for 3 weeks. And I know that my garden is not going to die because it will get watered still while I'm gone. And I have neighbors, who will come harvest for me so the produce won't go to waste. But I think it's really difficult to, again, like balance the homesteading stuff with the modern life part. And some of that technology makes it easier. It's expensive, but it's a way that I'm able to do what I do and still have the lifestyle of like not being chained to my homestead.
100%. Yeah, the automatic watering thing is huge, and that's actually the only reason I have any semblance of a garden right now. The problem is that the weeds don't respect the water. They take it from the plants you actually do want to eat sometimes. Um, but on the manual side, do you have any kind of like let's play the game of long-termy grid down type stuff? Is there stuff in your kitchen, hand powered old school tech that you keep just for that, or that you enjoy using regardless of whether or not you've got electricity in the house or not?
Definitely. I have this love of vintage items, and I'm really into like vintage cooking and household. Basically, anything that's like a useful vintage item, I'm like interested in. So I have these like uh, old school whisks that you can like hold and turn a crank, and it will like blend stuff together. So if replace a hand mixer basically. That I'm not keeping for the end of the world necessarily, but more because I love objects that have history, and so that's in part why I like to think about how many meals that item made. I really like uh, the manual process of making food. I have a small house, and I think about it from a financial perspective of like when you have a big house and you have a big kitchen and you have all these big appliances, like how much are you paying for that appliance in rent for it to like live on your countertop? And so I like the reduced carbon footprint, small house thing, but it's also like a financial thing. Like, I don't want to have a big house and have to pay so much money to like store all of these big bulky technology equipment thingies. Um, so I do have a KitchenAid. I use it every once in a while. I do have a food dehydrator. I use it every once in a while. But that's probably where and I have an Instant Pot, which I love, and it earns its keep because I use it all the time. Beyond that, I don't really have a lot of technology. Like, I like making things by hand. I whisk by hand most of the time. I'm pretty like low tech for somebody that has a lot of technology footprint on the internet. Does that answer your question?
It actually does. Yeah. How many attachments do you have for the KitchenAid stand mixer? Do you have all of them?
I only have two. I have the paddle attachment and I have the whisk attachment, but I don't have like, I don't love consumerism. Like, that's kind of the world we live in, and I get that, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to play that game. Like, I don't, and it feels kind of freeing to not feel like I need like the sausage attachment and the ice cream attachment and the whatever attachment. Like, all of those things are just so much money. And then you're like working more at this job to pay for all of these things that you then don't have the time to use because is that too much of a soapbox?
No, I like it. I wish I could be more like that. Yeah, I have a whole lot of the power takeoff attachments for the stand mixer, but I recently did buy the like a hand it's like a hand mill, like it attaches to the side of the countertop, and I just am looking forward to finding a reason to use that. Like, maybe I'll just grind coffee with it just to do it. But like I have this fantasy of having to make my own flour out of the acorns out front or something. So I did do that, and then I have the a carboy I use all the time. Like I tried to make wine. I'm not good at that, but I do a hot sauce every year. I smuggled some Thai pepper seeds back from Thailand, and I hope that CBP isn't listening. But I have grown a pretty rad Thai pepper garden, and I do a hot sauce using that fermentation process in the carboy every year. So that's one of those old school products that will kind of last forever that I use all the time.
And see, I'm pretty good. I'm not going to say I'm the best at it, but I'm pretty good at using the grill. Whether it's wood burning, charcoal burning, if I have gas available, that's just going to make it a lot faster and easier. But learning how to grill and how to cook over open flame without absolutely torching everything. I mean, we'll do fresh corn and just peel back the husk and make basically a corn popsicle out of it and roast it right next to steaks while they're on the grill, and it comes out great. But grilled pineapple, there's a lot of things that you can do on the grill. That's kind of my old school. I'm curious, do you have a manual or vintage, I'll call it vintage, wheat berry grinder? Have you ever made your own flour out of wheat berries?
I haven't gone far into that. I have made some specialty kind of flours before for recipes when the recipe kind of walks you through like how to do it so that it tastes as fresh as possible. For me, the juice is not worth the squeeze for me to go far down that rabbit hole. I think because I'm like probably getting pulled in 800 other directions that are more exciting to me. But I think it's cool, and I admire the people who are into that. I know a lot of bread bakers who are really into making their own flours.
Yeah, I always think about that. I want to have the ability to do it, but I'm right there with you that I can just go buy flour and it's so inexpensive that it just seems silly to do. But I want to make sure, because the other thing about preppers is that we're all hoarders. So I definitely want to make sure I have all of the equipment to do it if I ever actually need to do that thing.
I think that there's value in owning the gadgets if you use the gadgets. So I don't want to like knock too much on like you having the attachment AC
Right.
for the KitchenAid, because if you're using it, then great, like it's earning its keep. But I think what happens with most people, unfortunately, is that they think that, or it just ends up sitting around and collecting dust. And
A hundred percent.
some of the best cooks that I know in the world, like the people who are coming up with the coolest recipes and the coolest food, have like the most bare bones kitchen. Like, they don't have a mixer, they don't have a food processor. And so it's really like not the tool that makes the cook. And I feel like that's true with homesteading stuff too. Like, I don't have a lot of power tools. Like, I have one that's like a power edger, electric edger. But otherwise, like the best tools to me are like the old fashioned hand tools.
Very nice. I like that. So, besides your canning, do you do any other specific food preservation techniques that are kind of unique or really out there, or something that you learned before the pandemic that not a lot of people know about, or anything along those lines?
I mean, I do the hot water bath canning and the drying, and then I do kind of preserve certain crops that need to be preserved a certain way, which is really simple. For example, I just harvested all of our garlic for the year, and so the garlic is curing right now. You have to cure it in a dark, cool space like a shed or a basement for 2 weeks, and then I'll berate it because I'm a hippie and I think it's cool. And then we will eat off of that for the year basically until next year's garlic. And so that's one of those preservation things that I don't quite know which category it fits into, but it's like, well, that's just what you do when you grow garlic, and what you do when you grow onions. So some of these things, like, you grow and you harvest them all at once, and then you take care of them. The same thing with winter squash, like you harvest your winter squash and then you do the same thing depending on what kind of squash it is, you cure it. And there's actually, you can find it on Google. If you Google it, like if it's a butternut versus a Hubbard versus a delicata, like how long you have to cure it for and how long it will last. And so that's part of my like seasonal eating rhythm too, of like, okay, we harvest that, at the end of fall, beginning of winter. That's what we eat all winter. And that's what we eat into the spring. And then suddenly it gets replaced by all those spring crops. So there's kind of a natural seasonal rhythm to the way that we eat, and then the way that we stock up food that reflects that seasonality.
That's why you don't see butternut squash in the middle of summer at restaurants.
Yeah, and you shouldn't really be buying tomatoes in January. I mean, you can if you want them just to add some color, but they're probably not going to add a lot of flavor. And I feel like a lot of cookbooks now that I'm into are ones that take that into account, like the seasonality of foods. Or I'll look at a cookbook and I'll be like, you know what, this one's actually really good for July and August. And so I'm probably not going to cook out of it except for that season of the year. And then there are other ones that I tend to lean heavier on for the winter. And then there are some that are evergreen, but yeah, I mean, nobody wants to be like eating tomato salad with fresh basil in January or February because it's not going to taste very good.
You're just going to be very charred, heavy menu if you're doing salads in the winter. I
Yeah.
want to I want to know from you. So let's throw a scenario. If it's a long term sort of grid downy type event, how does your garden change? What are the things that you would say, hey, if we're going into survival mode, what are the things you would plant and what are the things you would stop planting? Like, and I'll give you my go-to. Man, I can grow a mean Lincoln pea. I don't know why, but they grow like crazy and there's a ton of them and they're very high they're very energy dense. There's a lot of protein. So I always think that, I'd probably go pea if that was like the thing that I had to do and I was going to try to, grow a garden to survive off of. But how does your garden change? Because you're a lot better at this than me. But if you said, hey, we're going to go into a situation where we're going to have to grow enough food on our tenth of an acre to survive, what kind of transition would you make?
Well, in that case, it's a good thing that I am a seed hoarder. So I'm not a hoarder
Exactly.
of a lot of things, but I do kind of have a seed problem. And so I always have a really good stock of like seeds that are not too old. When they're too old, I discard them, that I could pull from if I needed to, focus on like more like less luxurious foods that you needed to survive off of. And my go-to, some of which I do plant, like I plant potatoes. I would totally plant those. They're so easy to grow. You could grow them in like a bucket with holes on the bottom if you wanted, or like an old trash can. I have these big lightweight planters that I actually grow potatoes in. So those are super easy to grow. I would also grow cabbage, which I know is not the most attractive vegetable in the world, but it lasts for a really long time and like they can be humongous. And that's a lot of food that you're harvesting. And then winter squash also to me is a total home run because it just produces so much. So those would probably take over more of my garden, and I would not grow as much like basil and arugula would like not have as much of a place in my garden. I do still think there's a place for like soft herbs and lettuce greens and stuff like that that's going to give you some like fresh food that I can grow pretty well year round here. Um, but yeah, it kind of goes back to like the Depression era foods, which is
Hmm.
actually really interesting to look at what they grew in the Depression, because it was like potatoes, winter squash, like Hubbard squash, and maybe beans, because you can eat them fresh, but you can let them dry too. And if you grow like scarlet runner beans, those are a good like multi-purpose. They're vertical too, so you can like grow them up some poles and not necessarily take up a lot of horizontal space in your garden. But yeah, that's what they were growing in like the 30s, and there's a lot of sense in that.
That's actually that's a great answer, because you're right. We can look back at times in the past when they have had to grow their own food, and out of necessity, you're having gardens. You're exactly right. Those are the things they were growing. I have a question I need to ask, because this came in actually from a listener when I said I was having you on the show, and I want to talk about let's play out the end of the world as we know it should hit the fan type scenario, apocalyptic stuff, and you need to make a morale food. So this is a scenario where you won't have the baker's chocolate or maybe a big 10-pound bag of C&H sugar at home. What are the kind of treats that you could put together to keep the family motivated? I'm guessing this is going to be a very like honey heavy answer, but it made me think about when you said Great Depression, that I had read a story about people making water pie, if you'd ever heard of that, where it was starch. I think they were just basically making food starch and using that kind of as a gelatin center for the pie, and it made me think of that was like the morale food you had back then. But what would you do?
I think that anything sweet usually goes over pretty well. So I think that you're on the right track, AC, with something that has honey in it. Honey is like one of the rare foods that also never goes bad. And I think you just kind of have to look at what else you have available. So if you have things where you like flour or things that you could bake, you could make a really simple, like rustic, what I would consider like a snacking cake, where you make like a really basic cake and you mix in some fruit to it, and then that sweetens it up, and you could add some honey too. I think that would be a great morale booster. Like honey and carbs are things that we all associate with like being a treat. But it doesn't always like make you feel great afterwards. Um, I think that anything that is just really well seasoned can be a comfort food. So something that was like stewy, I think would be a morale booster also. Like if you've been on like a long backpacking trip or camping trip where you're like really far away from the modern world for a long period of time, like eating some sort of like hot soup that's really well flavored, I think can be really restorative, especially if you've been out in like really miserable weather and people are just feeling kind of sad and run down. I think those sort of things just make you feel like they like stick to your ribs, and they taste 1,000 times better than they would if you made them at home in your kitchen.
I'm a total soup snob. I'm right there. I get pushback on that, because a lot of people think that it like robs you of a meal or something. But I'm all about soup. I would eat soup for 3 meals a day if I could.
So this is probably a question for later on, but do you drink soup or do you eat soup?
I eat soup,
I think
even
you
if
eat
it's,
soup.
I mean, it depends on what kind of soup. So if it's like a pureed soup, I mean, I guess you could drink it, but usually the soups I'm making are like thick, chunky soups that have like a lot of layers of flavor, and you're not drinking that, you're probably eating that.
Yeah, more like a stew or a heavy base, something that's going to give you that long-term lasting energy. I like that.
So we're getting close to an hour, so I think we'll probably wrap it up. But Renee, I definitely want to give you a chance to kind of plug yourself, and you are kind of all over the interwebs. So if somebody wants to find you, or send you an email and ask some questions, or follow you, or buy your book, or listen to your podcast, where are all the places they can find you?
Man, I'm kind of overwhelmed with all of those potential ways that
Don't you have
people.
like a link tree or something that's just got everything, or a website where there's all the links? I don't know.
Yeah, the best place for people to find me is on Instagram. And I get that like not everybody wants to use Instagram or doesn't use social media, and that's totally fine. And I love that for you. But that's where I post the most frequently because it's easy and fast for me. My handle on Instagram is Hip Chick Digs. They can also like Google me and find my website and email me through hipchickdigs.com. Or I think that you can also email me at Renee, which is Renee at hipchickdigs.com, and that will also get to me.
Nice. I love it. Do you have any questions for us?
I mean, I feel like you guys are probably more experty in this category than I am. And so one of my questions for you is what you keep in your like go kit, because to me that's a challenge because it has to be lightweight. And so I'm wondering if you guys have to like bug out and go somewhere and you have to carry it all on your back, what are you taking with you? Food wise. Food
Yeah, I'll
wise.
answer for me, Chris. You can go. You can go next. But unfortunately, it's MREs are very nutrient dense and require nothing. You can open them up and eat them cold. You can warm them if you have a rock or something, and that's kind of a jarhead joke. For me, I have a get home bag in my vehicle, and in my scenario, hopefully, I'm not spending the night anywhere. So one of the big things for me if I've got to go is electrolytes. So like the elements or the liquid IV type stuff, especially if you're going to have to filter water on the road somewhere. Keeping the electrolytes up is really big for me. And then I do like kind of the snacky bar stuff. So I'm kind of a granola bar guy. There's a product, they make soulless rations, and a lot of people are probably familiar with them, but they're kind of like the sort of thing you would find in a life raft. And these things are not very good, but they come in a lot of these survival food things where it's very heavy. It's almost like a brick of like coconutty Crisco-y stuff, and it's the size of a deck of playing cards, and it's like 2,800 calories. But they sell flavored ones now, so I have a couple of those bars because it's just easy to eat, easy to go. They do not taste very good, but I would say, unfortunately, it really is the MRE. You're not supposed to eat them forever, but if you need 2,000 calories in the size of your wallet, that's probably the best go, unfortunately. I don't know, Chris, what do you think?
So we've got get home bags in each vehicle. We've got the go bags on standby. We've got the stuff that's in the tornado shelter, and then we've got our normal food. But yeah, the get home bags is a broken down MRE, just kind of shoved into different pockets so that you can always reach something to eat. The soulless rations, which they're pretty terrible to eat, but they'll keep you alive. And then granola bars or like Mylar packed peanuts, just that good old raisins and peanuts, gorp. Throw some M&Ms in there, but the M&Ms will melt if they're in the car. So it's just the super basic kind of backpacking trail food to get home. But the bug out bags definitely have a lot more sustenance to them. They've got starters for, we keep seeds in our bug out bag just in case, but having kind of a balance and things like that between how much weight versus how far do you have to go versus if I try to, in the Tennessee Valley area where we live, if I were to try to walk home from the doctor's office, I would have heat stroke by the time I got home because the temperature, the wet bulb, all of that is going to just kill me. But up north, once you get north of the Mason-Dixon line and actually have the potential for hard freezes, your food requirements change a lot. So easy to digest, lightweight, and nutrient packed. We also keep the Pedialyte dry packets, the ones that you can just toss into a bottle of water, because they're flavored enough that they are palatable, ? By children. So if it works for a 5-year-old, it's probably going to work for me. I'm at least going to try it.
There's a musician named Jason Isbell who I think is from Tennessee, and he is a recovering, this is going down a rabbit hole, he's a recovering alcoholic, And he talked about how when he was drinking, like he used to drink Pedialyte all the time. Apparently, it's a really great hangover cure. So
Oh, 100%.
that's
Yep.
now what I associate with Pedialyte. But those are
Yep.
great tips for the electrolytes. I should throw some of those in our kit. And then I'm also curious how you guys deal with water, because I feel like in an urban environment, it's tricky because we don't have a lot of storage space. And then I also think about, like, I'm on the West Coast, so we have like the big subduction zone. So the big earthquake could hit and our house might, you know, fall into the earth and may not be super accessible. And so I hesitate on like having a bunch of water storage in the house or in our basement. And so I have it in like our shed. But, you know, there's 5 people in my family, and that's a lot of water if you have to stay in place for 3 weeks. So what do you guys do for water solution other than like joining everybody else in the neighborhood down by the probably contaminated creek?
So for this one, I have to say the Sawyer mini water filter.
Mhm.
It will filter up to, I think it's 100,000 gallons of fresh water, and that filter is good for that full 100,000. But having a hand pump that you can kind of just turn the little crank and it draws the water out of your source, filters it, and dumps it into a bucket or bag or whatever you've got to carry, is just going to save you a lot of time. So the Sawyer Mini, I think, has the longest lasting, and you can attach it to an actual hand pump. The life straws, those are good, but you can't really attach them or see the filter or see if it's cracked or anything like that. You just have to trust it.
I'd say Life Straw is a good one because you can attach them to water bottles. But you're right, it's not a good product for filtering a bunch of water. I have a couple of rain barrels, Renee, and there's a lot of places locally you can pick those up. I get a black rain barrel because then they don't get as scummy. And then there's a lot of different ways to filter those. If you want to get crazy, one thing you can do is you can get one of those. It's a 12-volt RV pump that it's how they pump water in an RV, and they have a 3/4 inch adapter on both ends, so you can actually screw that into a garden hose. That's garden hose fitting, and you can actually backfeed your home with these. So let's say in a grid down scenario where your plumbing stops working, if you stop the plumbing to the street, you could actually run one of these RV hoses into a garden hose spigot, and you
Hmm.
would be able to backfeed your house with that water from a rain barrel. Now, it's very low pressure, so you're not taking showers. But as far as having water that would come out of the sink, you can actually do that. And I've done that before just for fun, just to make sure I could. But yeah, the filtered thing, Sawyer minis are great, like Chris said. Life straws is a good option. Another one is water bricks, and I don't know if you've seen these, but it's maybe a 2-gallon-ish. It looks like a giant Lego, and so they stack. They're very stackable. You could make stuff out of them. You could actually stack stuff on top of them if you were out of storage area. So they have these products called a water brick where you put filtered water into it, and it's got a little spigot that you can put on, and then you can stack these things as high as you want. You can do all kinds of stuff with them. You could use them for the legs of a desk, like if you're short on space. So water bricks are a great way to store water. And then obviously you just got to make sure you're cycling it out every once in a while. Even if filtered water goes in, that water, will still eventually get scummy and go bad, and plastic is semi-porous and all those kinds of things. But that would be my answer.
That's cool. I didn't know about the water brick. I mean, that's my problem, is what I have doesn't have that ability to stack and be really stable. And I haven't wanted to get like a 55-gallon drum, that you could
Yeah.
fill with water, because like that's going to take up a whole bunch of space and it's an awkward size. And,
Do you not harvest rainwater at your place and water the plants with it?
I used to, but I stopped doing it. I found that it takes up precious square footage, even just at the downspouts. And then the water wouldn't ever last. Like, we have dry summers. And so, when you need the water the most, you don't have the water in the rain barrel. So I just found that most of the time I was like routing it to the back of the garden and just leaving it open all year. And then that wasn't really, again, like the juice wasn't really worth the squeeze for me with the rain barrels. But I think if you have it tied into your, emergency water system or something, then that could be great. we don't do it like that anymore. Our space is just real tight.
Very nice. Well, any other questions before we send this one off for the publishing and editing and everything like that, Renee?
No, I don't think so. I feel like I've talked a lot. Sorry about that.
No,
That's why you're
this
here.
was a great episode.
is
I
awesome.
learned a ton. So
Yeah, I learned
we
a bunch.
definitely thank you for coming on and sharing some of your hard-earned wisdom with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. This was super fun.
Absolutely. Well, be sure to join us next week. We are going in a completely different direction yet again. We are going to be talking about nuclear fallout and everything that comes with that. So stay tuned. But until then, remember, you are your own stakeholder.